Madam President.
Senator from Utah.
Madam President, invasion is taking place on American soil. Over 8 million people have crossed our border illegally since Mayorkas became secretary, and the numbers just keep rising. They're not going away. This unprecedented, lawless influx includes gang members, it includes drug traffickers, and dangerous individuals from every country in the world, including many thousands of military-aged males from China. What could go wrong? In December alone, the Department of Homeland Security reported 302,000 encounters in 1 month. This is the highest month ever on record. To be clear, Secretary Mayorkas has the tools to stop the invasion today. He could do it right now if he wanted to. It's almost turnkey. It's abracadabra. If he decided to do it, we could have a secure border, and we would. Not only does he have the tools, but he has an obligation and a responsibility, an affirmative duty under the law, under the laws of the United States, laws that he agreed that he'd faithfully enforce. Let me say that again, just to be very clear. Just by enforcing the laws currently on the books, he could bring our state of utter lawlessness on the border to a state of order. Mayorkas could bring a complete stop to the crisis. He doesn't need legislative action from Congress. This isn't a policy disagreement. No, it's a blatant defiance of the laws that are already on the books and have been for years. So to my colleagues, if you're so confident that the charges against Secretary Mayorkas are baseless, then why not hold a trial? Why try to just sweep this under the rug? You realize, don't you, that when you do that, all that does is just make you look more conscious of what's going on, of what's being done that's so very, very wrong, especially where, as here, it's such a departure from nearly 2.5 centuries of this institution operating faithfully as a court of impeachment. Nearly 2.5 centuries in which, we've had 21 articles of impeachment that were destined for the Senate. At least 20 of those arrived. In 18 of those total of 21 cases during the Senate's existence, 18 of those 21 culminated in a trial resulting in a verdict of guilty or not guilty. Those other 3 involved cases that were rendered moot in between the time that the House of Representatives adopted the articles of impeachment and the time they were presented over here. They were rendered moot either because of a death or a departure, a new vacancy in the office that had been occupied by the impeached official. So this isn't just an ordinary act of sweeping it under the rug. It's an act of sweeping it under the rug under circumstances where sweeping it under the rug isn't an option. It never has been. We haven't done it. So this isn't just some invisible Casper the Friendly Ghost coming in to get rid of it. They're actively doing it, and they're doing it under the full view of the American people. The American people should be really upset by this because Article 1 of the Constitution gives the House of Representatives the power to impeach and the Senate the power to try all impeachments. Remember, the Senate has only 3 states of being, exactly 3 states of being. Legislative calendar, where we do a lot of our work, where we consider laws. Executive calendar, where we do things like confirm presidential nominees and consider treaties for ratification. And the 3rd state of being for the Senate is as a court of impeachment. We're always in one of those 3 states of being. And yet we have never operated in that 3rd state of being unless the case has been rendered moot, where the Senate doesn't hold a trial, as it's required to do under the Constitution, culminating in a verdict of guilty or not guilty. Now, if you trust that Secretary Mayorkas didn't authorize millions of individuals to enter illegally into our country for swift and precursory release, then let's hold a trial. If you're certain that Secretary Mayorkas hasn't increased the pull factors incentivizing parents across the globe to send 430 1,000 unaccompanied children illegally into the United States. In many cases, to have them end up in the hands of traffickers, drug traffickers, human sex traffickers, and otherwise, then let's hold a trial. If you're confident that Secretary Mayorkas hasn't created at least 13 illegal immigration parole programs designed to increase the flow of people into this country by the hundreds of thousands, then let's hold a trial. If you're so sure that Secretary Mayorkas and under Secretary Mayorkas' leadership, Customs and Border Protection hasn't dramatically decreased its vetting process for allowing Chinese immigrants to cross our border, including military-aged Chinese males, then let's hold a trial. If you believe that we haven't seen a dramatic increase in the known terrorist encounters at our border, then let's hold a trial. If you're confident that Secretary Mayorkas hasn't allowed enough fentanyl to flow across the southern border to kill every man, woman, and child in this country, then let's hold a freaking trial. Madam President, these are not victimless crimes. The tragic case of Lakeland Riley, a life cut short by an illegal alien, one of the millions whom Secretary Mayorkas has recklessly, intentionally, deliberately, and maliciously allowed to enter our country unchecked, unvetted, is a reminder of the human cost of this abdication of duty. Lakeland isn't alone. Her case represents hundreds of thousands of families across this nation whose lives have been upended by the invasion that our leaders allowed to happen. Think about that for a minute. They allowed it to happen not by negligence, oversight, carelessness, inattentiveness. No. They encouraged it to happen. Should Secretary Mayorkas be found guilty, these are crimes of the highest order. It's the sort of thing that doesn't happen very often in this country. The sort of thing that I hope we'll never have to experience again. The sort of thing that could otherwise result in a Toby Keith song, may he rest in peace. The sort of thing that unites Americans in surprising ways. The American people understand something's terribly wrong, and they expect us to act, Madam President. In all previous impeachments sent to the Senate, we held a trial. Save those rare circumstances where the case was rendered moot by death or vacancy of the office, not facts present here. We held a trial, and that trial culminated in each and every instance in a verdict of guilty or not guilty. But Majority Leader Chuck Schumer now seems to want to take the radical step, the unprecedented step, the lawless step, the the anti-constitutional step of trying to table these articles of impeachment without even letting us examine the evidence. This begs the question, what would he do? What would he do if he were confident, if the majority leader were confident that Secretary Mayorkas had acted lawfully, honorably in this office? What would he do if he were confident that the American people weren't turning on his party because of this act of lawlessness, this interminable succession of absurdities imposed by the myopic logic of their own border non-enforcement strategy? This is exactly what it looks like, Madam President, when someone is aware that there is a problem and wants to sweep the problem under the rug. There is no rug here. You can't hide this. There's no rug big enough to accommodate that. And shame on us if we play into that strategy. So look, to colleagues on my side of the aisle and on the other, I implore you. I know many of us are institutionalists, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, no matter how far toward the left wing or the right wing or somewhere in between. I appeal to your sense that we have an obligation to take seriously our oaths to the Constitution, that we have an obligation that must be honored to look out for the institutional interests of the Senate and the role that it plays in the sacred order created by the United States Constitution. When the articles of impeachment arrive, we have a job to do. The Constitution and our rules and our precedents make that abundantly clear. To ignore the evidence before us is to betray the trust of those who sent us here. There's no doubt at this point that the invasion at the southern border has inflicted indescribable, incalculable, intolerable pain and suffering on far too many Americans. We're obligated to figure out who's responsible and hold them accountable, beginning with Secretary Mayorkas. I urge each of my colleagues to oppose this shameless effort to sidestep our constitutional duty and, by so doing, subvert the constitutional order. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.